Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful day, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. Thank you all for tuning in. We've got a great show lined up. A brilliant thought leader, Ana María Archila from the New York Working Families Party, is here. She is working on the New York City mayoral race for Zohran Mamdani. If you've been following Zoran's mayoral race, it went from being, impossible to possible to probable. We're not done yet. Election day is on Tuesday. She's going to talk about his platform, his campaigns, and how to make sure we elect Zoran to the New York City mayor's office. He's just running a brilliant, brilliant campaign. I also want to talk about Juneteenth. Juneteenth just passed, and our show only airs once a week, so I got to take what I can get. And so I want to make sure we talk about Juneteenth. And then finally, we need to talk about what's happening with Israel and Iran. We cannot risk nuclear war. I'm old enough to remember the propaganda leading up to the Iraq war, and I know a lot of my listeners are as well. And I feel like I'm watching a rerun. This is a very painful deja vu all over again. Iraq has WMDs, Iran has a nuclear weapon. These are lies propagated by warmongers to pad their stock portfolio and increase their defense contractor contracts. Don't fall for it. We'll talk about that in a second. But before we bring on Ana María Archila, I want to talk about Juneteenth. And by the way, if you're not already following the Equal Justice Initiative, they do brilliant work. And what I'm doing is sharing just kind of their overview of Juneteenth. I highly recommend you go on to EJI.org and subscribe. I'm subscribed to their calendar. They do amazing work. But what is Juneteenth? And I want to talk about this in a way that is hopefully an ignition for you to go learn more on your own. Because in the next 5, 6 minutes, I'm not going to be able to do justice to this critical national holiday and day of remembrance. But I want you, especially non-Black people, Black folks already know this. I'm talking to my non-Black audience out there. It is critical we don't just show up on Juneteenth and on Black History Month, that this is an ongoing journey, especially important at a time when this administration is doing everything it can to erase history, to prevent people from learning about history. So take that moment to learn. And somebody said it best. I saw a TikTok by a white guy, ironically, that was really perfect. That what can white people do on Juneteenth? And he listed 5 things. And the first thing was give Black people money. And the second thing was give Black people money. And the third thing was give Black people money. But the fourth thing was give Black people money. And the fifth thing was smile. And I thought that was fantastic. And to me, it's a shout out to the fact that we've never paid reparations in this country. We've never paid restitution, not for slavery, not for Jim Crow, not for redlining, not for the racist GI Bill, not for mass incarceration, not for the prison industrial complex, not for the war on drugs, not for the anti-welfare bill. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So let's talk about Juneteenth briefly, and then hit up your Black friends and give them money as an acknowledgement at the very minimum of the work that needs to be done ahead of us. So what is Juneteenth? Well, on June 19th, 1865, after white Southerners had extended the enslavement of countless Black people by concealing the Civil War's end for 2 months, Union troops finally arrived in Texas, and for the first time, local Black residents learned that the Confederacy had lost the war and that they were free under the Emancipation Proclamation. And although, President, I'm reading from the EJA again, although President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had theoretically freed enslaved Black people and Confederate territories when it was issued in 1863, that declaration was largely unenforceable in locations that remained under Confederate control. The proclamation had absolutely no effect in Texas and other Confederate states. They rejected the freedom of enslaved people, especially on plantations that had little contact with Union forces. So as you hear these conservatives talk about rule of law, well, the rule of law was clear, and for 2 years, they still hid the rule of law. Now, despite the limits of the proclamations reached during wartime, the Confederate Army's surrender on April 9th, 1865 should have immediately freed enslaved Black people in all the states and territories where the proclamation applied, which was, of course, the entire country. But the proclamation had exempted so-called border states of Maryland, Delaware, Kentucky, and Missouri. So even Union victory did not affect slavery in those areas just yet. Where Confederate defeat did mean emancipation, however, white Southerners committed to white supremacy and to the continued exploitation of enslaved Black people by using violence, misinformation, and threats to keep Black people in bondage. Union troops' arrival in Texas on June 19th, 1865, brought news of freedom to Black men, women, and children who had waited far too long. And that date came to then be known as Juneteenth in the African American community and has for generations remained a day of remembrance, joyous celebration, hope, of course, remembrance of the hardships, of the pain of enslavement, of the trafficking, of the mass rape, of the just atrocities and genocide they faced, but joy also at the celebration of survival and the hope for the opportunity and peace that freedom should bring. Now, EGA goes on to point out that Juneteenth does not denote a struggle completed or a finish line reached. Black Americans face many threats to their liberty and their lives in the years after the Civil War, and they continue to face those as well. And I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but remember, once um, formal enslavement fell, you still had prison enslavement via the 13th Amendment. Once formal enslavement fell, you still had black codes and the rise of Jim Crow and the rise of the KKK, who have killed, by conservative estimates, more than 5,000 black people since then. That's a conservative number. Um, Slavery did not become illegal throughout the U.S. until the ratification of the 13th Amendment. And again, that is important to note that the amendment's language, still in force today, makes an exception. The exception authorizing involuntary servitude as punishment for crime. So slavery as a punishment for crime. And even after the 13th Amendment became national law, many southern states, including Kentucky and Delaware, resisted ratifying the provision for decades. Mississippi, by the way, didn't ratify until 1995 and didn't formally file the passage until 2013. After I graduated from law school, 2013, my guy, like, there's not a single person listening to this that doesn't remember 2013, let alone 1995. That's when Mississippi finally ratified the 13th Amendment. That's how bad this situation is. And so when we talk about Juneteenth, we need to recognize that this is not a finish line. It is an acknowledgement of a step forward, and the line is still way far ahead. We have not even begun to talk about reparations and restitution. H.R. 40, the federal bill to even study reparations, is still stuck in committee because Republicans keep opposing it and not enough Democrats are getting behind it. In a minute, we're going to bring on an amazing leader, Ana María Archila, who is the director for the Working Families Party. And we're going to talk about Zohran Mamdani's race. And the reason why I'm shifting to that conversation is because Zohran Mamdani is running a campaign that really focuses on working families, working on economic justice issues. And the reason why, this matters is because when we talk about things like reparations and restitution, it's really fundamentally about dignity. It's about economic justice and giving people the economic dignity to live their lives as best as they possibly can. And when we talk about the future electeds that we need to bring into public office, we need to talk about this priority of people focused on economic justice. And Zohran's campaign does that brilliantly, focusing on economic justice. He's got a proven track record, been reelected to the New York Assembly position 3 times. He knows the ins and outs of working families. He comes from an immigrant background, and he knows how to bring folks together. And so I'm excited to bring on Ana María Archila. But really, if you're listening to this and you're white, especially, take a moment to invest meaningfully in Juneteenth. Invest in your Black neighbors and friends. Invest in Black-owned businesses, in Black artists and Black musicians. Invest in a community that is truly reflective of the kind of world we want to create, where people have economic justice, the economic dignity. When we come back from break, we are going to speak with Ana María Archila, who is the director for the Working Families Party, about the race for mayor for Zohran Mamdani. And if there's one thing you take away from our message, is to rank Zohran first and do not rank Andrew Cuomo. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. I am extraordinarily excited about our guest this week. You may have heard that New York has a primary election coming up On Tuesday, June 24th, I'm grateful to have Ana María is it Archila or Archila?
Archila.
Archila. I am grateful to have Ana Maria Archila, New York Working Families Party Director, talk about this race. An amazing leader, has been a leader in the immigrant rights movement for the last 2 decades plus, and now she's partnering with, yes, Zohran Mamdani, to make sure that we elect an actual working families, working man's mayor and prevent Cuomo, an 11 times credibly accused sexual abuser, from getting into the mayoral office. Anna Maria, it's a privilege to speak with you today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, this is a race that I think I first became aware of not long after he announced. I'm South Asian, and Zoran's South Asian, so I've got my South Asian radar. Anytime somebody from one of my particular community announces for any kind of office, I'm typically either called and asked for money or for support. And in this case, I was just called to say, "Hey, this guy's running. You should pay attention." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." And the first couple of videos I saw, my initial reaction was, wow, this guy gets it. He's smart. He can communicate. He is level-headed. It's a shame that he's just not going to have the resources to go against someone like a Cuomo, a juggernaut. And now I'm proudly eating my words. What's the magic? What did you guys do this last year that kind of turned the ship into what it is today?
Yes, so first of all, so many people had minimal expectations about Zoran's ability to communicate, to build a campaign that could engage a city as large, as diverse, both uh, in terms of national origin, economically, politically diverse. And Zoran has really demonstrated that with what I think is his magic sauce, which is that he started by talking to people. The
Yeah.
first video that Zoran made back in November, I believe, was a video where he went to the parts of Queens where Trump saw the highest increase in support.
Wow.
Some of the immigrant neighborhoods in Queens where people have felt sort of the pressure of the large influx of recent migration. And he asked people, why did you vote for Trump? And they
Mhm.
said, I'm tired of the Democrats that, come here only to ask for votes, don't help. I'm tired of feeling like my family is left behind. We're struggling too much. And he just listened. He had a disposition of listening to people and really not assuming that people were beyond reach
Yes.
and engaging people in the core fundamentals that they were worried about, which was New York City is very, very unaffordable. It's
Yes.
impossible to afford the rent. Childcare is beyond reach. Groceries are extremely expensive. And he said, okay, I am going to build a campaign that focuses exclusively or intensely on making New York City affordable for working families. And then he began to not just present sort of that vision, but actually propose a set of very specific ideas.
Yes.
Freeze the rent for rent regulated apartments. 2 million people live in rent regulated apartments.
Hmm.
He said, I am going to freeze the rent. He said, I am going to make buses fast and free. New York
Love
City is a sprawling city. Some
it.
parts
Yeah.
of the city have access to the subway, some parts really don't. A lot of immigrant neighborhoods and working class people are pushed into the neighborhoods that where they have to rely on a bus service that's the slowest in the country. And then he said, I'm going to make childcare universal and affordable for everybody. Amazing. Three core ideas, very easy to understand, very concrete. And that's how he began. And I would say the other really important element of his success has been from the beginning going into neighborhoods and talking to people. He's Zoran is a member of DSA. He's a member of several Muslim organizations. He really inspired people to volunteer and start knocking on doors really early, which is
Yes.
very unusual. People think there's like sort
Yeah.
of the dogma in campaigns like the running for mayor of a large city is you really save all your money to communicate on TV. And he
Yeah.
said, I'm not going to wait until the last 3 months. We're going to start talking to people now, which
It
was really important because the after the November election, the electorate was so depressed and demoralized and distracted. So really putting in place an apparatus that allowed to communicate directly with people and to listen, not just to convey a message, but to listen to people's
Yeah.
concerns,
And
made all the
we
difference.
this is what we were screaming at the Democratic establishment, that for God's sake, go and listen and talk to people, understand why people voted the way they voted. And there's a reason why the Democratic Party, I've said this repeatedly, it should be a source of deep humiliation for Democratic Party leadership that you lost an election to a fascist twice, that you should have won both times. And despite that, despite as if that you know, insult to injury, the insult wasn't bad enough, but the injury wasn't bad enough. The insult to that injury is that despite losing, you still have a lower approval rating than him. People still like him more despite all the terrible things he's doing. He's in the 40s in approval, you're in the 20s. People are approving twice as much, and that should be a red flag that, wait, maybe we're doing this wrong. And I think Zoran's model there is so effective. And the second thing I'll say about your comments there, Ana Maria, is I love the fact that he's leaned into who he is. He
Yeah,
hasn't tried to, be like, well, you need to moderate and, draw in more people. No, you need to lean into who you are and be authentic, because people love authenticity. They may not like everything about you, but they will like the fact that you're authentic way more than seeing you try to squirm and tell them what they think you want to hear. And you might lose a couple of folks who say, well, I don't necessarily agree with this particular stance, but you will lose a lot more folks who will say, well, I actually don't know what his stance is because he told me X, but he's telling that person Y. I'm just gonna back out another typical. And so his ability to just lean into the fact that he's a member of DSA, or lean into the fact that he's Muslim, or lean into the fact that he's Gujarati. I mean, these are all amazing things that every politician out there should take a lesson from. I want to also go back to your point about the free buses, because I don't think people realize how seismic and important this is. Think about the impact, and I want you to talk about this because this is what the first thing that came to my mind. It wasn't the fact that it's going to cost 700 million. That in a city like New York City is chump change. I mean, New York City paid 1.5 billion in settlements for police misconduct last year. So we're
that's
talking less
right.
than half of that. Um, Talk about the economic impact this is going to have on working people, and how this is going to drive, no pun intended, the economic engine for people just looking for work and trying to get a job.
Absolutely. People, the political class really laughed in some ways at Zoran when he presented this idea. They said, oh, pie in the sky, too expensive, impossible. Basically, the approach that they tell always to working class people about a basic sort of foundational safety net. Too expensive, there is no money. And without actually recognizing the transformative effect that an investment like free buses that are fast and reliable would have on people's ability to get to work, people's ability to go to school, people's ability to
Yeah.
move their families around, and the fact that New York City has one of the largest public transportation systems. These themselves are engines of upper mobility.
Yep.
People who have worked as bus drivers and subway conductors have a path to the middle class. And investing in public infrastructure is not just about the infrastructure, it's about the families that actually also have just a higher, brighter future.
Yep.
At the last rally that Zoran did, the leader of the Transport Workers Union spoke. And he said, Democrats always talk about transportation, but they really just invest in cars. Andrew
Mm.
Cuomo literally did the infrastructure, some of the signature infrastructure that he did was expanding a bridge that then he named after his father and spend millions of dollars putting lights on it, and then expanding a highway, the Pulaski Highway that connects Queens and Brooklyn, to have more cars. And so the leader of the Transport Workers Union said, very few people understand the role of transportation in the well-being and the upper mobility and the opportunities that are available to working class people. And that's what actually investing in buses makes possible. Obviously, New York City has a very complex subway system,
Yeah.
but growing the subway is incredibly difficult, expensive, takes decades.
Yeah.
Investing in buses is actually a much more doable alternative, and it would make a huge difference for people that live in the sort of farthest reaches of Queens, of Brooklyn, of the Bronx,
Absolutely.
where we have places that where housing is more affordable.
Yeah.
So Doran, and this is one of those ideas that is the inside the idea of free buses, fast and free buses, is a recognition that everybody deserves dignity,
Yeah.
and everybody deserves comfort, not just the luxury of living in Manhattan, but actually being able to get to your job in
Yes.
on time, not spending 2 hours wasting the precious time that you could be with your family. So it's a policy that's imbued with values that respect and honor people,
If you're just tuning in,
and
we're speaking with
beautiful.
yeah, if you're, I'm going to co-sign on that in a second, but I just want to introduce you again to our listeners who are just tuning in. If you're just speaking, just tuning in now, we're speaking with New York Working Families Party Director Ana María Archila. She is working with Zohran Mamdani on his run for mayor of New York City. And I love that word dignity, Ana Maria, that you use. It really is about dignity. We grew up low income, Section 8 housing, food stamps. And when we couldn't get a ride home from school or couldn't get a ride home from work, it was a walk. And sometimes it was a mile walk, sometimes it was a 5, 6 mile walk. And I'm telling you, there is nothing more dehumanizing than walking home 5 miles because you couldn't afford a $3 bus fare. Because we didn't have
Mhm.
it. $3 was a lot of money back then. And it's a lot of money for some people now, especially $3 every single day for a month, $100 a month. Who has an extra $100 a month lying around? And so that word dignity really strikes me to my core because that's what a public servant should be doing. How do we ensure people have dignity? And I think the core of that is economic justice, is give people economic justice so that they can be truly self-reliant, so that the way we're spending tax dollars is to invest in the community, not in tax subsidies for the top 1%. Um, Zoran was on
Exactly.
CNN, I think CNN, and he was asked about, how are you going to pay for it? And I thought he gave a brilliant answer about increasing the tax rate for corporations, not to some astronomical level, but just to what it is across the river in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And about asking the top 1%, people making 1 million more a year, to pay just an extra 2% in their taxes. And that alone would raise close to $10 billion, which is going to be more than enough to cover these three initiatives of freezing the rent, of free buses, of universal childcare. See, it was such an easy message that I heard it once and I already have memorized. I don't have notes in front of me. Um, talk about that because I think people always say, well, and this is what the billionaire class is saying. Well, we can't afford that. The irony of billionaires talking about not affording something. Um, to the working folks that we want to make sure they rank Zoran first. Talk about that economic message and how that all we're doing is asking the very, very top just to pay their fair share so that everyone can have equal access to dignity.
Yes, that has been a central feature of Zoran's work as an assembly member. He right now represents the neighborhoods of Astoria and surrounding areas in the state assembly, and he's been one of the leading voices demanding a tax system that actually asks the rich to contribute appropriately. Um, just to give you maybe a sense of proportion, in 2022, the state budget total New York state budget was about 220 billion dollars. And the amount of money that I'm trying to remember, I might be getting these numbers wrong, but the amount of money that the 125 billionaires that live in New York City have made during the first 2 years of the pandemic was 8 billion more than the
Yeah.
whole state budget.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that's
than
absurd.
the whole state budget. So
Absurd.
these folks are accumulating an astronomical amount of money,
Yeah.
and they are just their money grows money and grows money and grows money. And
Yeah.
what Zoran is proposing, which is a very basic idea, is first of all, these people don't need all this money, but also they
Mhm.
could contribute just a tiny fraction and it would make a huge difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
So instead of having Albany turn around every year and tell people there is no money to provide vouchers for people who are being evicted from their homes, or there is no money to invest in mental health services, let's actually just tax the richest few a little bit, which they won't, for the most part, won't notice. And that will make it possible for working families to afford childcare, which
Yep.
is, in New York City, you could easily spend $25,000 in daycare
Minimum.
a
Yeah,
year,
minimum.
minimum,
Absolutely. Yeah.
easy,
Yeah.
and make childcare available to everyone, and that will allow working class people who are the ones actually being pushed out of New York. The billionaires are staying in New York. They're fine. They can afford all the things. It's working families. It's
Yeah.
especially Black families that have had to leave New York because they can't afford to stay here. It would allow New York to become a place where working class people can live and thrive.
Yeah.
And in 2021, at the height of the pandemic, we succeeded, a coalition of many organizations, immigrant organizations, tenant organizations, parents who were fighting for education funding, succeeded in sort of building an alliance, sticking together, and increasing taxes on the rich. And that made a huge difference. We were able
Yeah.
to provide, support for essential workers who were left out of the unemployment system. We were able to equalize the funding formula for our public schools and do a lot more. And so we need to do this again. We need to actually make sure that in a moment when, we have Trump feeding on the fears and the frustration of working class people who say, "Why is my life getting harder while
Yeah.
I see the rich getting richer?" Instead of just letting that be done and letting Trump feed, use hate and xenophobia to, agitate people without helping them, right? Instead of letting that happen, let's actually change the circumstances and return people to the sense that their government has their back
That's exactly right.
and
I
that their
love that.
leaders are fighting for them.
I love that. And you do that by providing dignity and economic justice. And,
Absolutely.
this basic, very basic concept that is so controversial about increasing taxes on the super wealthy, this is how life works. This is how society works, right? When you become super wealthy, it's not because you invented money out of thin air. It's because the society you were in made you wealthy, and you should contribute back to that to help other people up the ladder. I don't know if you know the study, but in Massachusetts in 2022, they increased taxes by 4% on people earning a million or more a year, and they thought it would generate another 1 to 2 billion in revenue. It did two things that were unexpected. It generated more than 4 billion in revenue, and the second
Oh,
thing that it did, this is the part that nobody expected. Um, the number of millionaires in Massachusetts increased by nearly 40%. So by
yeah.
taxing the super wealthy, you made more people super wealthy. What a concept, right? That
Mm.
happened because you were able to invest in working class people, give them more resources, and guess what they do? They spend their money, particularly
Yes,
locally, and small businesses and mid-sized businesses then grow because then people spend money locally. And this is the message I have to working folks, that if you're afraid that somehow taxing people in the two comma bracket is going to hurt you, you've been propagandized. The exact opposite is true. And I'm just doing some math in my head. If we can save people 30,000 a year in childcare and freeze rent, probably save them another 5 to 10,000 a year there, and then make transportation free, save another 5 to 10,000, you're giving them another 50 to 60,000 a year that they will spend in New York and help small businesses grow. Like, I don't know how much more clear it can be.
that's it. That is exactly the formula. Yes. That is
And the
exactly the
fact that
formula.
Zoran is
Mhm.
so just adamant and forthcoming with it, it's a breath of fresh air. We were talking offline, and if you're just tuning in, we are speaking with a brilliant leader, Ana María Archila of the New York Working Families Party. She's a director. We're talking about the New York mayoral race, which Working Families Party is firmly behind Zohran Mamdani. Make sure you rank him first. We were talking off air about just how much fun you guys seem to be having. I mean, these videos are amazing. They're authentic. The one that made me laugh out loud, there were plenty of made me laugh out loud. I love the one he spoke in Urdu because I speak Urdu as well.
Amazing.
Great.
Yes, that's the best.
But the one that made me really laugh out loud was where he said that my team says I talk too much with my hands. And so his hands are in his pocket. And then he takes his hand out and his I don't know, some guy, whoever he is, just slaps his hand down. And that
Yes.
made me laugh super hard. And then whosever idea it was at the end to like after the ad ends, it has him start to bust out laughing. That was brilliant as well. So you guys are having
Lauren
fun.
has
Like
these,
what's
he's like, he's actually a hilarious human being. There is
that's great.
like no way to have a conversation with Zoran without laughing really
That's
hard.
great.
So he
That's
just
great.
like carries himself as like, he just has this like internal resource of joy that just like bursts out all the
That's
time.
great.
And I
That's
think that energy has been incredibly attractive and captivating. And he's been able to actually use sort of like humor and seriousness, righteous indignation and imagination to break through so much of the noise that people are
mm,
sort of bombarded with. One of the things that has been really remarkable about his campaign is the is the way that it has sort of brought people back into the democracy. As I was saying at the
yeah.
beginning, people are very, very scared right now, very worried about our future. Trump is terrifying our communities.
Yeah.
Just a few, as you know, just a few days ago, ICE agents arrested another one of our mayoral
Yeah.
candidates, Brad Lander, when he was accompanying people out of ICE court, and I hope we talk about that in a second. But what Doran has done with these videos is really break through the like use the attention economy in some ways to bring people into a sense of optimism
Yeah.
and to invite them and to do it in a way that feels deeply authentic. The video in well, so many of the videos have these elements, like this combination of joy and like a serious message. He
Yeah.
did a video in Spanish, that he does not speak Spanish,
Okay.
so he practiced, how to say things in
That's
Spanish,
amazing.
and then someone said, "Oh, Zoran used AI to do this." So then they put out the outtakes that are hilarious of
That's
him getting
amazing.
it all wrong. So he's just like not afraid to just show exactly how hard he's trying to communicate with
That's
people,
great.
and how, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's super challenging, and he's just doing the work.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a breath of fresh air, very much like in contrast with Andrew Cuomo, who has been literally hiding from borders. Andrew
Yes.
Cuomo, of the like more than 100 days that he's been campaigning, has only answered questions from the press maybe 6 or 7 days out of this time.
Wow.
He skipped all the mayoral forums.
Well, the way he got his butt
He
kicked by the way he got his butt kicked by Zoran in the last one is probably a good example why he skipped them because he
he
knows he can't
Yes,
go to toe to him.
he
Yeah.
cannot, he is not as agile, and he is yes, he's hiding. Andrew
Yeah.
Cuomo has been hiding because he doesn't want to answer questions about his record of sexual harassment, doesn't want to answer questions about the actual ways that his policies made New York unaffordable for working
Yeah.
class people. He doesn't want to answer the questions about what he did wrong during the COVID years, the way that he fed corruption and, backroom deals. And
Yeah.
he mostly doesn't want to talk to people about the future. He just wants a
No.
return to power,
The
with
dynasty.
an
Yeah.
ambition to run. Not He doesn't care about New York City and making the schools better or cleaning the rats. Like that's not what where his mind is. His mind is on running for president,
That's
and
right.
this is
Yeah.
why it's tremendously important not to let Andrew Cuomo return. Not because not because of Cuomo. Cuomo is a person that definitely, does not belong in power, but because he represented the interest of the billionaire class. The
Yeah,
same donors that funded Donald Trump have given millions of dollars to
exactly
Andrew
right.
Cuomo, Bill
Exactly.
Ackman, Ken Langone. The list is so long. So in a moment when we are fighting fascism, the last thing we need is the largest city in the country, the city that's supposed to help lead the fight against authoritarianism, to be in the hands of someone that's owned by the same very people that prop up Trump.
Excellently said. We're speaking with Ana María Archila, New York Working Families Party Director, about Zohran Mamdani's campaign for mayor of New York City. And, we talk about Cuomo and all the problems that he brings to the table. He comes from his dynasty class. He doesn't really care about New York. He wants to run for president. For me, as a human rights attorney who's worked on women's rights my entire career, the two that particularly stand out to me are the 11 plus cases of credible accusations of sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And the second one is not getting as much media attention, so I'm going to bring it up. The fact that he sued for gynecological exams of women. I mean, I can't think of a scenario where that shouldn't horrify you. I mean, imagine you have a coworker who sues for your gynecological exams. You would go to HR and say, this person is sociopathic, get me away from him immediately, or I'm going to quit. I don't want. And then imagine HR comes back and says, actually, we're going to make him your direct supervisor. Like, it
Yeah.
would be mortifying. Why would anybody want to tolerate that? And the fact that this guy not only committed these horrible acts, but then when he was held accountable, he said, I'm going to sue to get your private medical records, your gynecological records, no less. Now make me even more powerful. It's absurd. It is crazy. And this is my ask of everyone out there that look, even if Zoran is not your perfect candidate, okay, that's fine. He's not claiming to be. You will never find a perfect candidate, but I can tell you this, if your bar isn't higher than I don't want the guy who wants my gynecological exams exposed, then we got to talk. Like we got to seriously talk. And I think what you see in Zoran is not just who he is. I love the fact that he talks about his mom so often.
Hmm.
Just the journey that she's taken to get him to where he is right now. I love the fact that on really difficult issues for politicians about Israel Palestine, he leans into his morality and talks about his love of the unity between Muslims and Jewish people and the common and shared humanity, while acknowledging the atrocities being committed in Gaza and not whitewashing that. And I love the fact that he's truly built this coalition. If you're listening to this, election day is on Tuesday, so it's right around the corner. In these final couple minutes, Ana Maria, can you share with our listeners, if they're in New York City or have family or friends in New York City, what's the strategy? How do we make sure Zoran wins this election? Where should they go? How can they get involved? What to do in these last, 48 hours or 24 hours or so?
Yes. So we have a ranked choice voting system in New York City. And what that means is that voters get to vote for up to 5 candidates in the order of preference. The Working Families Party has worked over the last year to make sure that the left and that progressives are not split like we were in 2021. So we have uh, built a strategy that allows candidates who are rivals to compete with each other, but also team up. So we have a slate of candidates with Zoran ranked number one, Brad Lander ranked number two, Adrian Adams, who's the current Speaker of the City Council, number three, Senators Zellner Myrie, number four. What we are asking voters is to go to the polls, rank the candidates in the order of preference. We, of course, are encouraging people to rank Zoran number one, but even if Zoran is not your number one, put him on your ballot. Do not put Andrew Cuomo. If we
Exactly.
get enough people to not rank Andrew Cuomo, we are in really good shape.
Yeah.
We will have a mayor that sides with working families and not the billionaires. And make sure that everybody in your family, in your building, in your community knows that this is a real election. We have an incredible opportunity to elect a leader for New York City, the largest city in the country, a leader who will actually have the courage to stand up to Trump, the an agenda to deliver for working people, and a movement behind them to actually really step into this moment in history that requires all of us to make our democracy come alive, make our democracy be real, and be one that has the back of people who are feeling so demoralized.
So just to recap that beautiful comment, rank Zoran number one, rank these recommended voices, you said 4 through 5, and do not rank Andrew Cuomo.
Absolutely. Yes.
And if people want to find their polling location in New York City, how do they do that?
They can go to the New York City Board of Elections. We also encourage you to check out the website rankthislate.nyc. Rankthislate.nyc. You'll see information about all of our candidates and all the information you need to go to vote.
Ana María Archila, we are so grateful to have you. I love the work the Working Families Party is doing. You are truly representing the working class. I love the work you've done on this campaign. Good luck to you guys on election day.
Thank you so much, Qasim. Thank
And
you.
once you guys win, we'll have to have you and Zoran back on here to talk about the general election in November.
Oh, yes, it will be real.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban Radio Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was New York Workers Family Party Director Ana Maria Archila talking about Zohran Mamdani and why we need to elect him mayor of New York City. Make sure you rank him first this Tuesday and do not rank Cuomo. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was the brilliant Ana Maria Archila, New York Working Families Party director, talking about why we need to elect Zohran Mamdani. And y'all, if you're in New York City, if you know somebody in New York City, call them and vote yourself. Rank Zohran first. Do not rank Cuomo. And let's elect a true working class mayor to the largest city in the country, New York City. I would say the greatest city, but I am from Chicago, so I have to be tribal, and I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but you know what I mean. Vote Mamdani, rank him first, do not rank Cuomo. Look, as we close out the show in the last 5, 6 minutes, I want to talk about what's happening between Iran and Israel. We are facing an existential situation here. Last week, the Israeli government preemptively attacked Iraq. They attacked Iran. But it would be a mistake to assume that Netanyahu's unilateral decision is something he just now concocted. This is the culmination of more than 3 decades of disinformation from Netanyahu against Iran to expand his power. Disinformation that has led to mass destruction, devastation, death of countless innocent people. And as the United Nations, as the United States, we need to uphold international and human rights law. Otherwise, this is going to get worse very quickly. And I just, I'm going to remove emotions from this and just share the facts. And I want you to just hear the facts and you tell me who is in the wrong here. And by the way, I say this as somebody who has been vehement in condemning the injustices committed by Iran. I am the furthest thing from an Iran apologist. What we are talking about is the threat of nuclear war. And I want to present the facts to you, and you tell me who is the real threat here. Back in 1992, 42-year-old Knesset member Benjamin Netanyahu raises concerns about Iran's nuclear threat, saying in 1992, Iran is close to producing a nuclear weapon within 3 to 5 years. In 1995, he said the exact same thing. In 1996, the same thing. In 2009, in 2012, and 2015. Every time he was dead wrong. Every single time. In 2002, you might recall, this man sat before US Congress and said, if you take out Saddam, I guarantee you it will have positive, enormous reverberations on the region. He went on to talk about the importance of destroying Afghanistan and Iraq and then Iran. And as we've seen, those so-called reverberations have led to the rise of Daesh, to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, the destabilization of Syria and Libya, the displacement of tens of millions across the Middle East. In fact, a landmark study in 2016 by physicians and scholars found that the Western wars waged by the United States government at the behest of people like Netanyahu have resulted in the killing of more than 4 million civilians. 4 million Muslim civilians. Does this sound like peace and justice to you? And if you think that Netanyahu has ever apologized for his catastrophic propaganda, one that's cost us trillions of dollars, shattered countless lives, think again. He's only doubled down. And by the way, keep in mind that the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, that Netanyahu vehemently opposed, that Obama got signed to prevent war, that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, admitted that Iran is fully compliant with and not building a nuclear weapon. Not only did Netanyahu convince Trump to break that deal, when Iran later said, hey, we will still rejoin, he convinced Trump to not rejoin this deal. And now you're going to accuse Iran of having a nuclear weapon, even though as late as March 2025, US intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard herself admitted all of our intel is telling us that Iran is nowhere near a nuclear deal. This is the problem. That over the last 30 years, Netanyahu has taken every single opportunity to spread disinformation about regional nations, advocated for war and violence against, including civilians, and is now launching attacks against Iran. And now, with no regard for international law, he is leading Israel in a unilateral military strike against Iran. So let's be crystal clear what this is right now. You have a sitting head of state already charged by the International Criminal Court for War Crimes, who is facing internal charges of corruption and bribery, is now bombing another sovereign nation without provocation, with no credible justification. This is not self defense, my friends. This is a war crime. This is what happens when the international community turns a blind eye to genocide. When you let one atrocity go unanswered, you do not avoid conflict, you invite the next one as well. In the last 20 months, by the way, the Israeli government has executed a genocidal siege on Gaza, killing, by some estimates, according to The Lancet, more than 224,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children. They have deliberately bombed hospitals and schools and churches and mosques and refugee camps. They have enacted a famine. The BBC just reported 2 days ago that at the aid site that the Israeli government set up after banning all other aid sites, they killed 51 Palestinians who were coming to get aid. So they block aid, set up their own aid site, and when Palestinians come, they execute them like fish in a barrel. This is genocide. That's exactly what this is. And so compare the situation here, right? Let's talk about these 5 points because I want you to remember these 5 points. On nuclear weapons, Iran does not have any nuclear weapons according to the United States government, even as recently as March 2025. Meanwhile, Israel does have about 200 nuclear weapons. They're the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons, by the way. IAEA inspections. Despite not having nuclear weapons, Iran has repeatedly opened its facilities with full transparency for countries to inspect its facilities and has consistently passed those inspections. Meanwhile, despite having hundreds of nuclear weapons, Israel refuses to open its facilities to the IAEA. So no transparency. NPT, the International Treaty on Nuclear Non-Proliferation. Despite not having nuclear weapons, Iran has signed the NPT, that they will not proliferate nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, Israel, despite having hundreds of nuclear weapons, refuses to sign the NPT, meaning for all we know, they could be building even more nuclear weapons right now. Iran nuclear deal. Iran signed and fully abided by the Iran nuclear deal as confirmed by the IAEA. Meanwhile, Israel vehemently opposed the Iran nuclear deal and worked successfully to dismantle it and to prevent it from coming into force. And then first strike and proportionality. As of the recording of this show, Israel committed the first strike on Iran, which killed 100 and then have since killed 128 people and injured more than 900 so far. Iran's retaliatory strikes have only killed 10 people and injured around 100. So if the above 5 scenarios were reversed, we would unanimously, universally, unhesitatingly, unambiguously correctly recognize that Iran is the instigator here, that they're the aggressor, that they're the ones at fault. But even though that we know Israel is the one who is not signing the NPT, who is not allowing IAEA investigations, who has nuclear weapons, who is not allowing any kind of insight, who is striking first, who broke the Iran nuclear deal, somehow they're the victim in all this. Does that make any sense to you? I was old enough to remember the propaganda leading up to the Iraq War. It is verbatim the exact same propaganda right now. We cannot allow this to continue. This is also why we need to have independent media reporting on this because you're not hearing about any of this in corporate media. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I have documented all this with receipts to verified sources and you can better understand with your own eyes. This is not about being anti-Iran or anti-Israel, pro-Iran or pro-Israel. This is about being pro-justice, pro-human rights, and anti-nuclear war. If you believe, as I believe, that nuclear weapons are a scourge on humanity and we need nuclear non-proliferation to ensure there's peace globally, then support our work. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure we continue to speak truth to power. All right, friends, thank you for tuning in. We have got a great show lined up for next week, so make sure you tune in same time, same place, right here on Sirius XM Urban View. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Follow me across socials on all platforms at Qasim Rashid. And my friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice, and continue speaking truth to power. Until next week, peace.